and welcome back to Soccer Supernova with me, Amy Canavan. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Hibernian women's captain JOELLE Murray. JOELLE, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's not a bad wee setup, eh?
It isn't half. Just having a look at all the bits and pieces, and delighted to see that there's a few Hibs pieces there, so that's
brought
made
them
me happy.
forward. We've had to hide a few of the Celtic ones and we brought them forward to the front. There was a few cobwebs on them. Let's just get right into it. So we're here in Dalkeith. You're not based too far from here at all. You grew up just in the borders.
Yeah, so I stay 5 minutes from here actually, but I spent my childhood down in the borders, a small village called Churnside, with a very small population. So I've been in Dalkeith now for about 2 years. So yeah, it's obviously great because it's handy for my work at the stadium at Easter Road and obviously training at the training centre up at Ormiston.
Absolutely. So growing up down in Churnside, but rural, not city life, how did you get into the football?
My dad is probably the honest answer. He played locally. He played for border amateur teams, and then when he retired, he went into management. And I would just be on it every week to go to training, to go to his games, and yeah, it kind of just spiraled and transpired from there. So probably from the age of 5 is when my love for the game started.
And was it always Hibs?
Always Hibs, never in doubt. There was never ever, you know how some people have a year or two where they may be glory hunters, but me, I've always been Hibs, and I think that's because my dad's always been Hibs, and he wouldn't have it any other way, so I certainly had no choice.
Then was it a local boys club that you got into, or how was it growing up in that scenario? Because there's not the girls teams kicking around.
Yeah, so when I was younger, girls and women playing football, it just wasn't a thing. So I was the only girl playing in a boys team down in the borders, and I think it often became a bit of a novelty. But for me, it was just normal. I didn't let it faze me at all. I saw it as a challenge, and I certainly didn't see myself as a girl playing in a boys' environment. I just felt equal. So yeah, I mean, you see a lot of opportunities now for younger girls to get involved in a girls only environment, and that's something that wasn't prevalent when I was growing up. So for me, I probably wouldn't change it. I think it's stood me in good stead and provided me with a good base and foundation. Of course, boys are naturally stronger and faster, so for me, competing against them at an early age, I felt that kind of gave me a good foundation to then move and progress into the girls' game.
Do you think there's still a bit of scope then for mixed clubs at that age? Obviously, it will get to a certain stage that then you have to go, and it's right that you're going into like a girls' setup or a boys' setup, but is there still that room for a mixed sort of childhood club?
I would say so, and any parent or player that's came to me for advice, I've always gave them that same advice. I would always say that it's probably best to have that mixed game experience, because as I say, I can only speak positively from my experiences. So I think it is important to have those opportunities and experiences when you're younger, but of course then I think when I was younger, it was maybe 13 or 14, the age whereby you had to transition to girls only. But I would definitely say if there is an opportunity for a young girl to play in that environment, that mixed environment, I would say go for it.
So how did getting to Hibs come around then? Were you still playing with the boys at that time, and was that a female scout, or how does that all sort of come around?
Yeah, so I was playing in a boys only team, Churnside Juniors, Coldstream Juniors, Berwick Juniors, and I knew that this time was coming. So my dad actually saw an advert, and I'm probably showing my age here, but an advert in the Pink paper for trials for Hibs under-17s up at Meadowbank. So went up there, had a trial, and basically got asked there and then to kind of transition to the under-17s at the club, which was certainly a proud moment for me, but something that I maybe it was a bit daunting because I hadn't experienced that girls only environment before. So although I was excited at the prospect, I didn't really know what to expect.
We've mentioned obviously Hibs women, and they always sort of have been forefront in the women's game. Who was there at the time when you're going to under-17s?
It was, so the under-17s, so at the moment we've got quite an extensive pathway, but that wasn't the case back then when I started. So it was essentially the under-17s and then the women's first team. So when I stepped into the 17s, it was Victor Toon. So essentially it was players' dads. So players within that team, their dads were the coaches, which was quite a familiar theme back then. So Victor Toon, a guy, I think George Allison, another player's dad. So there was about 3 or 4 coaches that kind of delivered sessions, planned sessions, and basically there was no kind of head coach as such, but 3 or 4 kind of parents who essentially were our coaches.
So you're picked up by Hibs under-17s, but you're aware it's not a full-time career, especially for a woman even at that age. So what are you doing? You still at school? Are you moving into employment? Because it's a busy life then.
For me at that time, football was everything. It was always my priority. I did have aspirations, and I liked the idea of going into further education, like college and university, but I knew that would maybe have an impact and implications on my football. So for me, I finished high school, and I just wanted to play football, but at the same time make money, and be in a job that allowed me to train all the sessions. I didn't want to be restricted or have a job with an employer that kind of didn't support my football. So I made sure that when I left higher education, I got a job that would allow me to continue my training, because as you say, back then it wasn't probably even thought of a career. So it was very much an amateur sport.
How old were you when you made your debut?
For the first team?
For the first team, yeah.
I think I was about 17. So after the trial at Meadowbank, I was asked along to the 17s training, and they trained at the same venue as the women's team, St Augustine's, just off Ferry Road. So I don't know if it was me, my dad, or wrong information, but I ended up turning up and training with the first team on my first session. So I'm oblivious. They're maybe thinking, well, she's here, we'll allow her to train. And I think they were quite impressed. So that was my first kind of experience with the first team, albeit it wasn't a kind of a one that was meant. But I think, 17 when I made my debut, and I made my debut in amongst a squad of international players who were at the top of their game, and lots of characters. So of course me, a 17-year-old from the borders, quite shy, my eyes were opened, and in that first season, probably even the first 2 seasons, my kind of starts, my minutes on the pitch were few and far between. But what I gained from just kind of training with those professionals, with those Scotland internationalists, I was basically in awe of these players, and what I gained from a training perspective, never mind a game perspective, was absolutely massive. So
was the transition to the first team made that a little bit easier in the fact that from a young age you did have that leadership qualities, and you were made captain of the under-17s, and you go on to be part of a successful under-17s side? So does it make that sort of, like we say, transition into the women's team that a little bit easier?
Yeah, I think so. I think I finished my under-17s career as you say, captain, and with that role becomes a lot of responsibility. So naturally you become a leader. It encourages you to speak out more, communicate more, be more approachable. But it's strange because you go from being kind of at the top of the pile at 17s, quite confident, you're the captain, one of the better players, to then transition into the women's team, and it's like roles have reversed, and you're at the bottom of the pile and you go back into your shell. But I think although it was quite a mentally tough transition, thinking about, oh my God, I'm having to kind of meet new players, older players, experienced players. I think having those experiences as captain, as you say, kind of did help with that transition, but it was still daunting nonetheless.
So there was obviously the experienced players there, and we'll come back to that time. What was the setup that you walked into like when you were 17 compared to now? Because it is a totally different ball game.
Wow, I get asked this question quite a lot. It's basically night and day. I mean, we used to train a Tuesday, Thursday and play on a Sunday, and back then it was acceptable to only make one session. So if you missed a Tuesday but made a Thursday, you were still in contention for a starting place on a Sunday, which now it seems absolutely crazy. So it's night and day. There was no kind of external provision or resource like nutritionists, physios, masseurs, doctors. There was nothing like that. You were playing in kind of hand-me-down kit that were short-sleeved, meant to be short-sleeved, but when you're wearing it, it looks like it's 3/4 length. So yeah, it's absolutely night and day. The transition from the game from when I first made my debut at first time to now has been absolutely incredible.
So you've had a long career at Hibs, a very successful career, and the success started straight away, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of transitioned into a successful team at 17s. We were quite dominant in youth football. It was always us and Cumbernauld Cosmos when it came down to Scottish Cups, but we kind of always edged it. So from a 17s perspective, we were so successful, and then that continued at first team. As I say, the squad was littered with Scottish internationalists, incredibly talented players, and we dominated everything really. We would go through seasons winning the league title, the League Cup, the Scottish Cup. I think there was a couple of seasons we actually made it through a season without dropping points. So it was a hugely successful team, and a team with a massive winning mentality.
See, obviously you're talking about the Scottish Cups and whatever. I think it's around 2010 you guys win it, but you women win it, and then the guys don't. What's the mood sort of like around the whole club at that time?
It's tough in a sense because you've kind of got that double-edged sword whereby you're happy and you're elated that you've obviously won the Scottish Cup, which is arguably the most prestigious competition in the country. So you're happy, you're joyous, but then flip side of that, the club's just been defeated in the final of the same competition, obviously male equivalent to their biggest rivals. So it's kind of that double-edged sword, and for me, being a Hibs fan as well, I'm delighted for me and for my teammates and for the women's club and side of things, but then from a fan's perspective, I'm absolutely devastated. So it's kind of that double-edged sword as such that you're happy but you're sad, and it's kind of that mixed emotion that you can't quite process or understand. But yeah, delighted because I think, as I said, it's a cup that every footballer in Scotland wants to not only participate in but win, and the fact that we done it that year, albeit the men didn't, was a great achievement for us.
Do you think no matter what, and this is perhaps still the inequalities that arise in football, that even so the women win but the men don't, and that does still obviously hit the headlines, but what is the mood like within the club? Because does the men's achievements or disappointments just still override things?
I think so, yeah. I think it overshadows that success as such, and it does put a dampener on it because the club are very good at sharing stories, women's stories, fixtures, results, everything through their main club channels. But on occasions like that, it's getting that balance. You've just lost, or they've just lost. Do they then promote us winning as a success story? Or does that then get flipped to that awareness again of, oh, aye, that's right, the women have won and you haven't, and then comes the comparisons And we've had that, I've had that so many times in the past at club level and at international level, that the women are better than the men. And it's a shame, because you find that those are the types of situations that the women's game get talked about more, because they're trying to belittle the men's side of it, opposed to just celebrating our success in general, if that makes sense, which it is a shame, because you'd like to see success celebrated naturally and not because they're trying to get a manager sacked or shame the club or something like that. So yeah, it kind of does overshadow things.
It's came to light more in recent years, and the success of the national team certainly played a part in that. But even back then, we're looking at the early stages of your career, 2007, 2010 sort of years. How competitive was the Women's League? You're looking at Glasgow City, Spartans, yourselves. The attention just still wasn't quite there of how good the league was, was it?
No, it wasn't. I mean, the league was competitive. Of course, this year you've got Rangers and Celtic fully backing and integrating their women's teams, which it shows, because it's not just Hibs and Glasgow City at the top battling for the league title, and then the best of the rest. You've got 4 or 5 teams now up there. I think you can see from the first round of fixtures this season that everyone's beating everyone, and that just shows the competitiveness and the fact that talent is spread more evenly, and it's not just Hibs and City, as I said, battling at the top and then the best of the rest. So it's great that your Rangers and your Celtics are now showing that added interest and investing in their women's team, because I think clubs like them, who are known worldwide, should have done so a little bit sooner, to be honest.
Where along the line in your career were you made captain of the women's team?
I think I've now been captain for about 5 or 6 seasons, and it was a pretty natural transition. I didn't I wasn't awarded captaincy over the previous captain, and she was still there. It was kind of a natural. So Laura Kennedy, who was captain before myself, she retired. So again, as I say, it was that natural kind of progression and transition for me. So yeah, it's probably been for the last 5 or 6 seasons, and like we spoke about before and alluded to, it wasn't something that I wasn't kind of used to, because I had that experience at 17. So yeah, I kind of filled that void quite naturally, I think. Some may say different, but yeah, it was about 5 or 6 seasons ago now.
So the successes continued in your captaincy, and obviously we've talked about the cups and the league, but what is it like when you make that European appearances, the UEFA Cup and also the Champions League? What are those nights like?
I can only explain and express those nights as being, it's unreal, it's unbelievable. As a kid growing up, whether you're male, female, boy or girl, the Champions League is the ultimate. So to kind of play in those tournaments and those games, it's a dream come true. It's absolutely unreal. And I think the one game that sticks out vividly for me is that Bayern Munich game at Easter Road. The crowd was a record attendance in Scotland at that time. I think we filled the whole lower west stand, which was absolutely unreal. To walk out under the Easter Road lights against Bayern Munich with the Champions League theme tune blaring, it was incredible, absolutely incredible. So those nights are special to say the least.
So you're a Hibs fan growing up, and obviously, do you ever think that you as a little girl could walk out at Easter Road now, obviously, play at great stadiums with the women, but Easter Road, that's something special, especially when you're a fan and you're leading it out. That is the stuff of dreams, because that doesn't seem imaginable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was at Easter Road as a 5-year-old, growing up with my dad, it wasn't even something that crossed my mind. I was just at that time enjoying watching my heroes play on the pitch. So to be able to play on the same pitch as them, but not only as a player, but also a captain leading the team that I support out. Wow, it's like, as I say, I didn't even dream about it when I was younger, because I didn't even think I would come close to doing something like that. So yeah, it's something that kind of came full circle, as I say, to being on the East Terrace with my dad, watching my heroes on the pitch, to then being on the pitch with my teammates and leading them out against Bayern Munich, a massive name in world football. So yeah, it was unreal.
So we've touched upon it's a successful season, and I think we're kicking around that same time. Let's take the year of 2016 out. For both the women's team and the men's team, and as we've talked about, you're a fan. How immense is that year?
I can't even explain it, to be honest. I mean, the game at Livingston, we played Glasgow City, and probably a year in a cup competition for me that'll live long in my memory. I mean, I speak about the Bayern Munich game, but that game in that year, that's up there, because it was the first year that we broke the Glasgow City dominance. So to do it in the same year as the club broke that kind of 114-year hoodoo was unreal. It was absolutely incredible, and the scenes thereafter, the parading of the cup, I was fortunate enough to kind of sit down and have an interview and different bits and pieces with David Gray. So that's someone who's my hero and someone who has just lifted the Scottish Cup for my team. So to be able to sit down with him and speak about our own Scottish Cup journeys and Scottish Cup success stories, it was incredible, absolutely incredible.
So touching back to what we spoke about for 2010, then is it that reverse? Do you then feel, obviously, of course, that 114 year, as you say, hoodoo's come to an end and that has to be celebrated. Do you still think perhaps the double that the women done, and obviously ending that Glasgow City run, that dominance, was that sort of overshadowed by that as well then?
I would say so. I mean, as I said earlier, it is that double-edged sword, and you do want to celebrate, but you don't want to kind of rub it in anyone's noses. So it's kind of getting that balance of celebrating the success, but appreciating that your male counterparts have just had a devastating defeat. So yeah, it's just making sure you've got that balance, and kind of being respectful to the club and obviously the male counterparts as well.
The biggest thing in the last few years has obviously been the move from Hibernian ladies to Hibernian women. Now, to some that may seem minimal and not a big deal at all, and it's just probably a rebranding, but how big and important to you was that sort of move?
It was very important. I mean, I think you saw other clubs making the move, and there was lots of noise about it, from press, from media, from everyone out with the club, asking when and if we're going to transition. So for me, seeing your clubs down south like Arsenal, Man City, kind of changing their name and in a way that was kind of modernised, was something that I knew we needed to do. Of course, the decision wasn't up to me, but I'm glad we finally got there in the end. And for me, I think the next step is, of course, a Hibernian team in the SWPL as women. So for me, next step is, can we drop the women and can we just be Hibernian? Because naturally, externally, if SWPL team, it's naturally, of course, the women's team. So for me, that's the next step. And you've seen clubs down south, Man City especially, they've taken that one club approach, which is fantastic. So hopefully that's the next step on this journey.
Can you see it coming?
I think so. Not to go into too much detail, but we've had discussions. I've been privy to discussions about it. The club seem open to it. So yeah, hopefully we can get there. But I think that would just be fantastic, and we don't need to specify if it's male or female because it is very much apparent anyway. So hopefully we can get there.
So it was a big move for the club, but it was also a big move for yourself. You were the first woman to sign a professional contract. How did that feel?
Again, another momentous kind of occasion for me. I mean, on a personal note, being the first player to sign a professional contract was fantastic, but from a general perspective, it was great just to see the club making those positive steps, because for so long now, we've probably punched above our weight in the sense that we've always attracted and developed massively talented players without paying them anything. We've held on to the players because we've got a reputation for being a fantastic club. We've got a great environment. We've got a great team kind of ethos. Everyone gets on with everyone. There's no cliques. So we were almost punching above our weight. But your Celtics, your Rangers, and of course prior to that City, they all made the transition to semi-pro, part-time pro, and we knew that if we were going to stay at the top of the game, retaining the quality players that we've got, because of course you've got your approaches from City, Celtic, Rangers, and in the past players have probably stayed out of loyalty, but there's only so far that can get you. So we knew that the next step was a transition to semi-pro, and for me being the first player to kind of sign that contract was another kind of tick box, and something that was a proud moment for me.
So the club name perhaps moved away from that community foundation sort of arena, but your role just became even bigger. How did that all come around for the academy?
It's a strange one actually. So I worked for a pension firm and a life insurance firm, and I was asked into a meeting by the CEO of the foundation, and I thought it was just for a quick update, a brief, and I went into the meeting and I was offered this role as the Girls Academy manager, and it was a role that was a new role. So for me it was like, wait now, I'm going to be part of the club as a fan. I'm going to be part of the club as a player, and now I've got an opportunity to work for the club. So for me, it was a no-brainer. It was an instant yes. It was just logistically how we go about kind of making that transition. So my job is, and I've got a cheek to call it a job, because I go into my office at the stadium every day, obviously pre-COVID, and I've got a cheek to call it my job. So it's come full circle. Fan, player, employee. So the club consumes every part of my life. And when I say consume, I don't mean that negatively. I mean it positively, because it's played such a big part in my life for so long that I'm delighted to be given back to the club in any way I can. So I've now been in that role for 2 years and really enjoying it.
So you are, like you say, you're staying on that path in that full sort of circle, and you're setting the path for the next sort of generation. What exactly is your role within it then?
So at the academy we have quite an extensive pathway from under 11s to under 19s, and I think that incorporates about 130 players. So it's making sure that players are in an environment that's first and foremost enjoyable, but an environment that's challenging for them. So making sure that players have a development plan. It's very player-centric, the academy. There's obviously coaches, so making sure the coaches are continually doing their CPD, and also just making sure that the players have the resources that they need to develop and follow their dreams and aspirations, and I think that's why it's good for me, or it's beneficial for me to be in the role, because I've walked their shoes as such. I've went through that journey, so I know what they need, or I think I know what they need. So I'll always be chapping at doors, asking questions. If I get knocked down, I'll just go to the next door. So for me, it's about giving that relatable advice and trying to give them the best opportunity I can for them to follow their dreams and aspirations, because of course now women's football is a viable and feasible option for a career. So it's just passing on advice, talking about previous experiences, and making sure that they've got the best platform they possibly can to achieve what they want to achieve.
It is a career now that can be sustained and maintained, and that's also came from the success we touched on at the national side. How did that first cap come around? 48 caps, nearing that 50. We will get there. How does that feel when you get that call up?
It's another thing that I didn't think would happen. I was part of the youth national team for many years, so transitioned 17s, 19s, and then A squad, and I transitioned into the A squad at a time whereby there was an influx of very talented players, very experienced players. So I never ever thought that I would go from the under 19s to the A squad, because of course it's quite a jump. There's no under 23s, so quite often if you're not good enough at under 19s, you kind of get lost a bit. But I was quite fortunate to make that transition quite quickly, and to receive my first cap was a very proud moment. Pulling on your national team's jersey, singing your national anthem, there's no better feeling. So to get 48 caps is unreal, and as you say, hopefully I get another 2 to make the 50, but I'll cherish every 48 if not.
What's it like playing with I don't want to use trailblazers, but they were massive. Your Julie Fleetons, your Kim Littles. How good just are they?
Probably me sitting here explaining how good they are won't even give them justice, or do it justice, sorry. So Julie Fleeton was always, if you asked anyone of my era or just before or after me, who's your hero, who do you look up to, it's Julie Fleeton. And that's no disservice, because it's very much justified. It's more so now, there's more role models because the game's more prevalent, it's more mainstream, it's on media channels. So Julie was my hero, someone I looked up to when I was younger. She was my role model. So to then be on the same training pitch and on the same pitch as her was something, it was unreal. And I always used to remember at training, she would do incredible things that you don't even think are possible. And she would always stay back after training with a bag of balls and just hit balls, and it would go top corner, bottom corner. The keeper had no chance. And to see someone like that, I mean, you never see the work behind the scenes. And Julie got to the top because she worked hard. She of course was talented, very much so, but she worked hard, and it's that hard work that no one ever saw. So for me, seeing that, it kind of opened my eyes a bit. Obviously then you've got Kim. I had the pleasure of playing with Kim at Hibs. Again, it was just, to explain how good she was, it was basically just like, give Kim the ball, because she would just beat a whole team of players and score. So she was incredible. So to play with her at Hibs and then at national team is something that I'll always remember, and I hope I get further opportunity to kind of grace the pitch with her. But 2 fantastic players, not to mention players like Caroline Weir, another Hibs Academy graduate, now playing down at Man City. So we're quite fortunate as a nation to have so many talented players, and I think that shows in the fact that we obviously qualified for the Euros in 2017 and then subsequently the World Cup in 2019.
And they were 2 tournaments you were there. What's that sort of buzz like around the camp? Like you say, it's a very competitive side. You've got your Rachel Corseys, your Jen Beatties in defence as well. So it's a very, very strong setup to be called up. What was that pride like?
It was so proud. It was a very proud moment. I mean, the Euros, we before the Euros, we hadn't experienced a major tournament finals before, so we didn't really know what to expect. And the Euros were incredible, but the World Cup, just different level, absolute different level. And when you get to finals like that, and the main stages, that's the bar's been set, so you want that even more. So the fact that we qualified for the World Cup finals on the back of the Euros was fantastic, because you get that appetite for it. Of course, there's the competition. Rachel's the captain, so of course you're then looking at the other position of centre half, and then you've got someone like Jenny Beattie was at Man City, now back at Arsenal. So I knew going to the Euros and obviously the World Cup, it was going to be tough. But for me, and don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying I settled for just being in the squad, because of course I was disappointed not to get on the pitch. But for me, I wasn't naive enough to think that I was going to go there and get game time or lots of game time, because I know that the players in front of me were Scotland captains, had played at Utah, had played Glasgow City, Man City, Arsenal. So for me, getting there was a very proud achievement. So yeah, as I say, I wasn't naive at all, thinking I was going to get anything more than I did.
And it's that sort of flip to what it was at Hibs. Obviously, the women were succeeding for so much for that period of 2017 to 2019, and the men were doing absolutely nothing. Now, obviously, that's changed this year, and I know you'll just be as equally excited as we all are about that. But that's an even additional sort of level of proudness, because the whole nation was behind that, because we needed to get behind something.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that just gives you that boost, that lift, when you know that it's not just that internal group. You've got a nation externally behind you and supporting you and kind of giving you positive vibes. So I think that was a massively huge boost for us, and a huge positive for the country as a whole.
So there's obviously been that disappointment in the last few weeks, obviously not qualifying this time round. So what has everything been like COVID-wise for you, with the ladies, with the women, at Hibs, and then the national side as well? What's this last sort of year been like for you?
Yeah, so disappointing. Of course, like I spoke about, when you get to major tournament finals, it makes you want to get there year on, year out, and to not qualify was disappointing, was frustrating, because we felt like we were in a group that we were capable of not only qualifying but topping the group. So to not do that was disappointing, and I think the manner that we kind of we didn't qualify was poor. We knew that we underperformed. We didn't score enough goals. And of course, the finals are down in England, and a lot of the national team players ply their trade in England. So I think that added to that disappointment. So, I mean, taking the positives from it, we'll look to kind of build on that. And we know that as a group, as a pool of players, we've got the quality to kind of get back up to where we want to be. From a Hibs perspective, yeah, a lot of transition. Every year we have a bit of transition on and off the pitch. We, for so long now, we seem to go through a vicious cycle of attracting players, signing players, developing players, losing players. And of course, when you've got big teams down south offering vast amount of money, you can't compete, especially when you're a semi-pro team in your infancy. So we are kind of at that building stage at the moment, but we're hopeful that we can finish the season strong.
So in the meantime with the COVID-19 as well, you've sort of found another little venture with Hibs that really is taking over your life. How's that all came around, being part of Hibs TV?
It was just by chance, I think. I was contacted by Greg McEwen, head of media and marketing at the club, and he'd asked if I wanted to kind of guest on the first home game of the season, and I was excited, but I was nervous and anxious. I mean, I'd had previous appearances on the television, kind of punditry stuff, but I think when it's your own team, there's that higher expectation and want to do as well as you can. So it was just by chance. I was asked the first game of the season, and for me, I thought it was just going to be a one-off. And then transpires that I've been on multiple times since, and quite a mainstay on it. But it's something that I've really enjoyed. Of course, at a time where fans aren't allowed in the stadiums, it's given me the opportunity to retain that live viewing of games. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully I can get a few more games before the end of the season.
Is it something you can see yourself doing? And it is great. You turn on BBC at the weekend and you're seeing Leanne Crichton, and she's not just a pundit, she's doing a bit of presenting, she's talking to the managers, she's being treated equally. Do you think that's where you'd like to maybe go next?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that really interests me. I think it's stereotypical for ex-players to go into coaching, which is something that I do have a keen interest for. But I do like the media stuff. I love analysing games, whether it be Hibs or any other opposition. So it's definitely something that I'd be keen to continue throughout the rest of the season and beyond.
Well, Joelle, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And one final question for you. The show is called Soccer Supernova. So who would you have your glass of champagne with?
My glass of champagne would probably be David Beckham.
David Beckham?
David Beckham.
Is that who you always want to be in the parks? I'm David Beckham.
He was my idol growing up. So when I was younger, I tried to model my game on David Beckham. So I started as a right mid, and of course he was a right mid. Man United were my team. So yeah, I would try and swagger about like David Beckham. I'd try and hit the ball like David Beckham. So yeah, if I had that opportunity, I'd definitely sit down with him.
Do you have the bend on it?
I have the bend on it.
There we go. Joelle, thank you so much for joining me on Soccer Supernova.
Thank you.